What is up, roll coverage? It's your boy Nick. Today we are breaking down the Athletic article calling our Carolina Panthers the Hunger Games. Man, this is going to be a crazy one. Read it along with me. Let's go.
Hey, I thought it was all over.
So, thanks to Diana Russini, Mr. Joe Person, we are ready to break this down, okay? Jumping right over the article right here. What happened with the Panthers? Hunger Games culture, backstabbing, and another fired coach. I am going to make sure to put the link down in the description, so feel free to check it out if you want to read it along. If you're one of the lucky few to have YouTube Premium, I think I cannot live without it, so let's get it started. David Tepper thought he'd nailed it this time. After firing Matt Rule in October 2022, the Carolina Panthers owner was determined to get his second head coach hire right. Tepper, the hedge fund billionaire who bought the team in 2018, ran a more thorough search in looking for Rule's successor, focusing on the coaches with offensive backgrounds after missing out on what he called a CEO coach in Rule. I'm a CEO coach, sure. I mean, I think we're stretching things here. Obviously, there's a lot to say when it comes to being a hedge fund manager. You obviously got to be able to cut bait. You know what you're looking for. You really just need to get to the end goal, keep the people involved. One of the first press conferences David Tepper actually ever did was regarding bringing more venues and more shows and more entertainment to Charlotte. So I think that's one of the things that he really wanted to solidify as soon as possible, because that was going to be the thing that he could measurably say, hey, I set this goal. We met that goal. Yes, the football goal isn't there, but we're working on it. So I think that kind of all goes in together with it. Moving forwards, though, after interviewing 9 candidates, Tepper decided on Frank Reich, the former Indianapolis Colts coach and starting quarterback for the first game in Panthers history, something that, just to tell everybody, I said was going to be a problem, and that if they fired him in season, it was going to look bad on the organization. And I think that that whole narrative, we're bringing back the first quarterback for the Panthers, I think it was a massive misstep by the owner. So Tepper, with a net worth of $20 billion, gave Reich a 4-year deal and provided him with resources to hire an all-star staff that would help develop his new rookie quarterback. But halfway through Reich's season, Tepper was already contemplating another coaching change. With the number 1 draft pick Bryce Young struggling and the Panthers owning the worst record, Tepper warned Reich in early November he needed to see improvements on offense. Tepper had mortgaged the team's future to move up to draft Bryce Young. The rookie's development was stagnant under an avalanche of sacks and hits in the pocket. I agree with that, but I think it's not Reich's fault at that point. Reich was brought in to fix the football side, but the personnel was never there. That's where I think this falls on Scott Fitterer, and he's just kind of maneuvered his way around and made everybody else take the heat. And I think it's finally time that Scott gets his and gets his pink slip to move on. So that's just me. That's the thing I've been saying since the season started, but whatever. After the Panthers scored just 10 points with Reich again calling the plays in back-to-back losses to Dallas and Tennessee, Tepper fired him November 27th. The Panthers were 1-10 under Reich, whose tenure was the NFL's shortest in 45 years. Again, I think that reflects poorly on the organization. I think that it's going to hurt David Tepper in the long term. It's going to hurt the Carolina Panthers. You judged him off of Dallas and Tennessee. Yes, Tennessee was more winnable, but we were actually, kind of in that game for a bit. Dallas, if you expected us to beat Dallas, then you expected a mountain to lose to a molehill, so that makes no sense. I also don't think that this is 100% his fault, and I think he was scapegoated for it, and we're kind of seeing that now with this article. Full transparency, I have read the article already, and I actually listened to 2 separate breakdowns that people were talking about it, so I know a little bit about what's going to be in this, but yeah, this is bad, man. This is not good for David Tepper. This is a massive hit piece. I shouldn't say hit piece. This is a massive piece against him. That basically shows that he is the problem, which is something he doesn't like. That's why he actually ended the press conference at, 13 and a half minutes with his last one. So something to think about. During a news conference the day after I'm going to call him Frank's, obviously there's putting here right, a day after Reich's firing, Tepper declined to elaborate on his decision, telling reporters that they could speculate as to that. Yeah, at that point, I think Frank knew by week 4 or 5 things were going downhill, and I think at that point you're seeing the top of this article, the backstabbing. That's when that started. Week 5, week 6. So I think that Frank got to the point where he's like, man, this is not going to go anywhere. I'm going to get fired in the middle of the season. So I might as well just ride this out and let him fire me so I can collect that paycheck. And I can't blame him. And the fact that he now wants to remove himself from football is even worse. Again, I feel like he is hurt, which he should be hurt, that he was cut from this as the shortest coach in 45 years. For the team that believed in him and brought him in and did all, like, it blows my mind. Just blows my mind. The offensive problems and Young's development doomed Reich, but there was a lot going on behind the scenes on Reich's staff. The Athletic spoke to more than 20 Panthers coaches, players, and other league sources, some of whom were granted anonymity so they could speak freely. They painted a picture of dysfunction inside the Panthers' office, with assistant coaches undermining other coaches as many went into self-preservation mode when it became clear Reich's days were numbered. Team sources described a Hunger Games culture at Bank of America Stadium. Coaches said they believed other staff members were texting Tepper behind Reich's back about issues they saw with the team. In one instance, General Manager Scott Bitter and an offensive coach went to Tepper with a coaching suggestion for the quarterback. Don't people just finger pointing, hoping they don't get exposed, said one assistant. If that's the case, then I feel so vindicated. So vindicated. Man, I was called a Frank Stan, all this other stuff. This man was scapegoated. There's no way that this would happen to a Belichick or somebody like that because he would just get rid of him. Like, that's ridiculous. The fact that Scott Fitter, the GM, is going behind the coach's back with an offensive coach, which a lot of people have said is Thomas Brown, but obviously we do not know any confirmation on that, so please do not assume that. But regardless, a running back coach, a Deuce Staley or somebody like that went with Scott Fitter or something like that. Like, there's a coach and the GM worked together. Like, this was bad from the get-go. So there's a lot of people that were like, oh man, Frank needs to go, he's trash and everything like that. And I literally caped for this man. I tried to, still give him his blows. He still deserved, criticism and everything like that. But I think that by week 4 or 5, that press conference where he said that he hated or insinuated that he didn't like the weekly meetings, I think that was the first time where he was just like, man, I'm over this shit. So I think this is a much bigger problem, and I think Frank was absolutely the scapegoat. So everybody there or out there that was like, oh man, it's all Frank, it's all Frank, it's all Frank. Yeah, man, I hope you eat this crow today. This report just rebuts your entire position on that. So let's jump back to it, though. I'm tired of roasting people. Days before Thanksgiving, with the team spiraling and Young getting pummeled, Tepper told Reich to fix the rookie's footwork. Fitter and others had told Tepper that Young's feet were the cause of some of the Panthers' protection issues, and they believed that Young wasn't dropping back enough on his pass sets. Again, not letting the head coach coach. You didn't let him get his quarterback, and now you want to criticize the way he's coaching the quarterback that you forced him to get. Cool. Makes zero sense, but whatever. Again, it's just feeding into the narrative. Frank is going to come out of this smelling like roses because he was scapegoated from the beginning. They didn't even take the quarterback he wanted. Like, come on. We're really going to blame him for the problems of an owner. That's now coming to light. Like, man, miss me with that. Tepper has been criticized for micromanaging and getting hands-on with football decisions. Prior to the 2019 season, he persuaded then-head coach Ron Rivera to switch to a 3-4 defense, which Tepper was familiar with as a former Pittsburgh Steelers minority partner, and drove the team's interest in Deshaun Watson before the quarterback was traded to Cleveland in 2022. Tepper's instruction about Young's footwork came after weekly conversations between Tepper and Reich on Young's development and early struggles. League sources said Tepper struggled with the decision to fire Reich, but the combination of Young's difficulty understanding Reich's offense, specifically the reads, timing, and ball placement, as well as Young's lack of protection, convinced the owner the organization wasn't helping its quarterback, but ruining him. Okay, I'm going to break this down real quick. He struggled. Okay, I'm going to highlight it right here. He struggled. But the combination of Young's difficulty understanding Reich's offense, specifically the reads, timing, and ball placement, okay? He was lauded as the supercomputer. This man can process everything immediately, but he is having a difficulty understanding the old offense that everyone said. Everyone said, oh man, this is an outdated offense. Okay, if that's the case, he should have no problem understanding it. But he can't understand his offense, the reads, timing, and ball placement. That's a Bryce Young problem, no offense. That's not a Reich problem. If he can't absorb the playbook, that's Young that can't absorb the playbook. Andy Dalton can. Matt Corral could. Baker Mayfield could. All these other people can do it. Why can't you? So, as well as Young's lack of protection, that is an injury bug for one. A lot of people were injured this year. Can't take that away from anybody. But you also got to remember, this team was built since when with Scott Fitterer? Was it 10 months ago when Reich was hired? Oh, no. It was years before that. So Scott Fitterer is the reason why Young lacks protection. Okay, so I'm still waiting to see what about this is Frank Reich's fault. Convinced the owner wasn't helping its quarterback but ruin him. So again, that's the owner not understanding that Scott Fitterer and Bryce Young are the problem for those. Maybe you shouldn't use Nicole Tepper or outside people to make football decisions for somebody else's job. Okay? All I'm saying, look at what's on the page, okay? Look at what's on the screen. They're telling us exactly what's wrong. Bryce Young, the GM. If Bryce Young can't understand this offense, then Bryce Young's not the supercomputer we were told. So remember that. And remember who told us that. The owner and the GM. This Reich's firing came 10 months after he was named the first offensive-minded head coach in Panthers history. At Reich's introductory news conference, Tepper boasted of Reich's ability to build a top 10 staff that should be an absolute standard. With Tepper supplying the capital, Reich assembled one of the NFL's largest staffs, stocked with a pair of former head coaches in Dom Capers and Jim Caldwell, 2 ascending coordinators and Thomas Brown and Ejiro Evero, and several other well-known assistants, including Josh McCown and Deuce Staley. In fact, in this picture, it says from left to right, Reich, Dalton, Bryce Young, Josh McCown. It looks like a official, and I'm not sure who that is. I am seeing it. Is it 80? Maybe. Yeah, there they are. But fired. Tepper also encouraged Reich to go outside of his circle with some of his hires. As such, many of the offensive coaches have never worked together and brought different philosophies to an offense that would be led by a rookie quarterback from week one. Besides the disagreements in the scheme, there were personality conflicts and factions formed on a staff that include 2 main holdovers from Rule staff, offensive line coach James Campen and special teams coordinator, now interim Chris Tabor, both of which were retained at Tepper's urging. So, let's read into that again. Tepper told Reich to go out of his circle. He chooses to do that, which means out of the circle means they haven't worked together, which means, again, never worked together. Bringing different philosophies to an offense that would be led by a rookie. Disagreements, personality conflicts, and factions were created in that because Tepper encouraged Reich to go outside of the circle. And the 2 people that he decided to keep, James Campen is obviously here, and Chris Tabor, both of whom were retained at Tepper's urging, is now the interim. So what's to say that Chris Tabor wasn't actively working against him? If that's the case, I know that it said an offensive coach up here. Let me go up here to what we previously talked about, where they said that the GM and a offensive coach went behind his back. Here we go. Jesus. Here we go. Okay, sorry. I was one paragraph next. In one instance, General Manager Scott Fitterer and an offensive coach went to Tepper with a coaching decision on the quarterback. Now, offensive coach, I understand special teams is not offense, it's special teams. That could absolutely be something to throw people off the trail. What if it was Chris Tabor, our now interim, and Scott Fitterer working against Frank Reich? Again, this is a coup, just in case you guys don't know. And again, it all started because Tepper told Reich to go outside of the circle. So Tepper created the problem that would eventually get Frank fired. He also didn't give him the tools or the quarterback he wanted to succeed. You see how these are not Frank Reich's fault and why he's going to come out of this looking like no big deal? He's going to go get a job in a year or two someplace else? Like, come on. Moving on, though. After Tepper named Tabor interim coach last week, one of Tabor's first moves was to fire quarterbacks coach Josh McCown and running backs coach Deuce Staley, who was on Philadelphia's staff with Reich in 2017 when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Staley was still with the Eagles 2 years later when McCown played for the team. 44-year-old McCown logged 17 seasons in the NFL as a backup quarterback. McCown twice interviewed for the Texans head coaching job, but his role with the Panthers was his first NFL coaching job. Geesh, I cannot speak right now. Something else to remember about this. I'm going to go back real quick, and I'll also highlight it, of course. Tabor, which again was a holdover urged by Tepper, fired Josh McCown, a 17-year NFL backup, which, no offense, Reich is regarded as one of the greatest backups in history, so it makes sense to have him there. And Deuce Staley, who was great, especially with everything he did with Philly, and then I'm pretty sure he was on the Lions because he was on Hard Knocks. So Deuce Staley, who also has an intimate relationship with Ben Johnson, is probably telling him all this stuff too. And now, obviously, one of the things that people hate about the Philly connection with Reich is that we ended up going to get Miles Sanders. I think it just proves that Miles Sanders is a great back when he has the ability to run, meaning a pretty decent offensive line. We're seeing that this year with the Philadelphia Eagles, not to jump off on too much of a tangent, but the Eagles' offensive line is able to make DeAndre Swift look amazing. So I think it maybe might have helped Miles Sanders a little bit, but I also think, again, this offensive line, no running back could succeed. We could have Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey would be ultimately struggling in this offense with this offensive line and everything. But again, I think that Tabor knows a lot more than he's let on, and I think this might have been a big hack job from the beginning against Reich, essentially. Once he realized that it was over, the vultures came in, and he was like, man, I don't really care anymore, which obviously is a little bit of an indictment on him too. But some in Carolina thought Reich and McCown weren't tough enough on Young as the 2021 Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama got off to a bumpy start. Okay, I'm going to push back on this. And hopefully Ben, shout out the Keep Purring Pod, I believe. I'm sorry if I'm messing that up, dude. But I hope you hear this. This is a big deal because what this tells me is that, again, he was coddling the quarterback that the owner wanted. He was told, we don't want Stroud. We're taking Bryce Young. So what does he do? Okay, that's fine. So you want me to groom this kid and do this? Okay, well, I know that this kid moving better, doing better is the link to how I keep my job long term. That's how he started it out. And then eventually he's like, man, I'm gonna get fired, so I might as well not take it out on this rookie. This rookie doesn't deserve to be screen bet or anything like that. So I think this is another little nugget in there. Reich, Fitter, and the offensive coaches decided the priority before Young's first season was preparing him to call plays in the huddle for the first time and giving him time to absorb a playbook that blended Reich's system with wide zero concepts Brown brought from the LA Rams. Any tweaks or changes the Panthers wanted to make to Young's mechanics would wait until the offseason. I understand that. Just get him in, get him to start calling plays under center, and get him to just start understanding the system the first year, and then we'll work on fixing the stuff next year. You just need to absorb this year. We can't throw too much on your plate right now. I'll accept that. But Young has been taking a beating. He's been sacked 44 times, is on pace to finish with 64, which would be fourth highest total in the NFL history. Some in the organization believed inconsistent depth on his dropbacks was at least part of the issue for the 5'10" quarterback. No. First of all, one of the things that you guys are going to see, hopefully it comes up here, is they criticize the fact that we're under pistol and shotgun. But when you look at what he did in college, he's trying to make this quarterback comfortable. 98% of the time that he was taking snaps at Alabama, he was in pistol or shotgun. Frank literally talked about it in a press conference. So he was already giving you guys all this information and telling you the reason why he was doing it, but you were vilifying him for what was on the field, not knowing that all the stuff was in the background. So again, I feel so happy and vilified that I was right. Y'all were scaping Frank from the get-go, and man, a bunch of y'all owe that man an apology, regardless. If you made it this far, you owe that man an apology. Man. After Tepper delivered the message to do something about it, McCown began working with Young on his footwork before the Panthers' Week 12 game at Tennessee 3 months into the season. Veteran backup Andy Dalton said Young's dropbacks were among the teaching points during the Panthers' Thanksgiving week practices. So that's him confirming that. Okay, cool. Footwork's a part of playing the game, and it's not changing his footwork. I think it's just an emphasis on just keeping it consistent. I went through it too. On certain throws, you just want your footwork to look similar and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just more of an emphasis on that. One source said he didn't notice much of a change in Young's dropbacks against the Titans, who had 4 sacks and 6 hits on Young in a 17-10 loss that dropped the Panthers to the league worst 1-10. As he left the visitors' locker room in Nashville, a visibly irritated Tepper shook his head and yelled, "Fuck." That was the moment I knew that I'd wake up to Reich getting the axe, so that was really sad. But again, I'm just giving him more cachet. Like, was one of the best backups in NFL history. Won a Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator. Was our first quarterback in our first game as Carolina Panthers. Like, we shouldn't have done him dirty like that. I'm sorry, that's all. We could have fired him in the offseason. We just shouldn't have done him dirty in the middle of the season. Period. Reich was gone by the next morning, fired after the NFL's shortest head coaching stint since 1978, and for the second time in as many seasons. Reich went 40, 33, and 1 in 5 seasons in Indy before being let go in November of 2022. Some caveat to that is 2 of those years he had Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan. No offense, they're not good. I mean, Matt Ryan's been done for years, and Carson Wentz really is just kind of a murder for hire, or a gun for hire at this point. So, yeah. Reich, who turned 62 on Monday, would often use the phrase diversity of thought when describing his staff, but trying to incorporate Brown's ideas into a system featuring shotgun sets and horizontal stretch pass game proved to be clunky. It's just not a good offense, one staffer said. You didn't see Indy's offense where they were second in the league in rushing in 2021. You didn't see Philly when he was there, or when he was with the Chargers in those dynamic offenses. You didn't see any of that because he went outside of his comfort zone. Again, Tepper also encouraged Reich to go outside of his circle. This wasn't something like Frank Reich woke up, one day, and he was just like, you know what? I don't like tall, strong quarterbacks anymore. I really like a 5'10 quarterback in Bryce Young. You know what? I don't really like working with people that I know that I gel with or anything like that. I'm just going to go out and get a whole new staff. These weren't things. These things that Reich woke up one day and did. He was pretty much told by the owner. So I'm not going to sit here and accept this. And I will push back on one narrative that I heard. Can't remember where I heard it, so I'm sorry about that. I think it might have been 99 or 99.9 The Fan. I think it was Donnelly this morning did one where he was talking about it, and he's like, oh, we need Jim Harbaugh because he's going to go in there and he's going to fight with Tepper. Okay, so Frank goes in there, goes in front of the owner, and is like, fuck you, we're taking CJ Stroud. F you, we're doing this. F you, we're doing this. You think he retains his job? You think that's what David Tepper, the billionaire owner, is going to accept? No. He's going to be like, you need to understand your place. You're the head coach. So goodbye. Like, I don't think have you guys ever gone into a new job and 10 months into it, you go to your boss and you're like, F this, like you need to be doing this and all that? No, you don't. Some of y'all been in your jobs 10 years and probably haven't spoken up a goddamn word. So no, I'm not going to accept that. That's not an acceptable excuse. Nobody goes in there and just screams at their boss. Regardless of how much bluster you may have, you're going to be looking for a new job real quick if that's the case. Or you just have a boss with no spine. So, no, that's not a proper way to do business. That's not a way to be professional. That's not a way to be a good head coach. You don't go in there fire and brimstone. So, no, this idea that Jim Harbaugh showing up is somehow going to push David Tepper, into place kind of thing. Like, man, if you think some random college coach is going to do that to a billionaire hedge fund guy, you're crazy. Crazy. Anyways, I want to get through this article. But many in league circles, including Italian evaluators with other teams, question whether Fitterer surrounded Young with enough playmakers after the GM sent number one receiver DJ Moore to Chicago as part of a deal for the first pick. The Panthers are 13-33 since Fitterer arrived in 2021, a .283 winning percentage that is tied with the Bears for the worst mark over that span. Fitterer has been given no assurances as his future in Charlotte, according to league sources. That's the point that we need to look at. That people criticize Reich in Indy. 40, 33, and 1. Okay? Not great. 13-33. So no, I'm not going to accept this. No, I'm not. You guys don't know ball if you guys are sitting here telling me that it's not Fitterer's fault first before it's Frank's. Period. Yes, there's certain things that he could have done to mitigate some of these issues, but it's not for him. It's not his job in the first year to solve all of the Carolina's problems. Period. It's no coach's job to do that. That takes time, and if you're not willing to give time to the head coach, just roll with an interim forever, and y'all continue to suck. With the Panthers 0-6 at the bye, Reich turned play calling over to 37-year-old Brown, who coached running backs and tight ends with the Rams, but had never called plays. After the Panthers beat Houston 15-13 in the first game after the change, Reich gave Brown a game ball and later got choked up talking about the moment. But the Houston win was followed by losses to Indy and Chicago, both of which had losing records and were missing their starting quarterbacks. The Panthers managed just 13 points in both losses and failed to score an offensive touchdown against the Bears. The heat was turning up on Reich, with The Athletic reporting after the game with the Bears that ownership needed to see more progress on the offense. Reich was getting the message as well. On the Monday following the Week 10 loss at Chicago, Reich announced he would be calling plays again. I thought this was the death knell. Soon after that, I was planning that he was going to get fired. I thought him taking back play calling was bad. But you got to remember, to this point, 0-6, everyone is like, this dude, Reich, can't call plays. He sucks, blah, blah, blah. And I literally called it once he gave up play calling. I said Thomas Brown was going to beat Houston, and I said everybody was going to blow it out of proportion. So after that one, he gave him the game ball, all that other stuff. I think Reich genuinely wants to see others succeed, so he was really happy for him in that moment. But once he realizes that Thomas Brown can't call plays good enough to beat Indy or Chicago with this personnel, just like Reich couldn't win the first 6 games because the personnel wasn't there, not because of the scheme. Yes, there was issues and all that other stuff, but the personnel you just don't have the guys. You don't have the horses to win the race. Period. So he decided, yeah, man, I'm going to take it back. When he took that back, that was it. That was the mid-season firing moment. That was I've gotten to this point where 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're 10 weeks into the year because we'd already had the bye at that point. So 10 weeks in, he's like, dude, I'm going to get fired at any moment. So I'm just going to, go down with the ship. And that's exactly what he decided to do. And I think that's admirable. I also think that, during that that first 6 games before the bye, look at how many points our defense gave up on average. Now, if you were to take that same thing, if we can hold any of those teams to what we held Houston to, 13 points, 13, we literally win, I think it's like 3 or 4 of those games. So we're in a completely different situation at that point. But our defense couldn't show up. So the first game our defense shows up, our offense is able to put up a little bit, we're able to win the game. Now we're starting to see the defense pick up on the backside of the year, which is unfortunate. Obviously, a lot more people getting healthy and everything, but it's just all happened bad for Frank in this moment. And again, this article just vindicates me, tells me everything I want, makes me vigorous in my convictions that the Carolina Panthers, the owner, Scott Fitterer specifically, scapegoated Reich as a way to be like, oh, it's all his fault. It's not ours. So now you need to give us more time to rebuild. Sorry. So regardless, Reich's reversal further divided the offensive staff, with one assistant saying it was shocking. I didn't think it was that shocking. I take that back. It was shocking, but it wasn't that shocking in knowing that I think the writing was already on the walls at that point. Yeah, I think at that point he was the scapegoat. Everything was done. He was going to lose his job regardless. It's just which game was it going to be. After seeing Young play well in a hurry-up mode at the end of a couple of lopsided losses early in the season, Reich wanted to use more no-huddle offense and thought he was better equipped than Brown to run it. In Reich's first game back as play caller, a 33-10 loss to Dallas, the Panthers finished with a season-low 187 yards, and Young was sacked 7 times. In fairness, The Cowboys are top 5 in the league in yards and points allowed and ranks 7 in sacks. So you literally verse a overall top 5 defense and then hold the coach accountable for that. It's like being, hey man, the game after this was San Francisco and you guys lost 50-0. Like no shit. You just see what they did to the Eagles? We couldn't put 40 on the Eagles in 5 games, let alone one. Like, miss me with this. This is a blatant just joke. You're gonna hold a dude accountable for losing to Dallas? Okay, cool. Obviously, it's still a loss, but man, you're losing to a top 5. No, man, that's all that. The wounds from Reich's reversal on play calling haven't healed yet. When asked last week about Reich's impact on him, Brown called it a loaded question before adding he was fortunate for the opportunity Reich had given him. I actually did a breakdown of that, so go check that out if you haven't seen it. I agree it's a loaded question because you can't go after another coach. That's like the coach's code. When Sean Payton went after Nat Hackett, a bunch of coaches spoke out about it. When Jimbo went after Saban, that was a whole thing. So I think that was the right response from Brown. He obviously gave him the opportunity to come in there, be OC, call plays, do all that other stuff, and he's going to get the opportunity moving forwards. But no offense, in that Bucs game, the offense didn't look much better. So I don't think Brown was measurably better or anything like that. I think it was actually ran a worse offense than Frank Reich. So yeah, I think this is him just being like, yeah, man, I appreciate him, but that's it. I'm not going to comment anymore, and I think that's the right thing to do. The Panthers' defensive assistants, nearly all of whom had worked with Evero. Oh, you mean David Tepper didn't tell Evero to bring in people that were outside of his circle? Interesting. Previously, have been more aligned. Oh, makes sense. You guys know each other. Sorry, that's a lot of sarcasm there. But that has not been the case on the offensive side. At one point, several coaches wanted to bench Young in favor of Dalton, who had the Panthers' only 300-yard passing game when Young missed the Week 3 game at Seattle with an injury. But those conversations never reached Reich, Fitter, or ownership, according to high-ranking team sources. I think that again, you might as well just remove Reich's name at that point. But those conversations never reached Fitter or the ownership, according to high-ranking team sources. Reich wasn't making the decision to pull him out because the minute he makes that decision, the owner comes down and tells him to put him back in. That's not how this is going to go. I'm telling you, at that point, Reich was a patsy, or hopefully I'm using that right. He was scapegoated into this. This is bullshit. Other coaches felt they couldn't voice their opinions without being viewed as malcontents. That's why two dudes got fired, because they opened their mouths. Several sources said Reich would call out Young for mistakes during team-wide film reviews, as he did other players earlier this season, but backed off in recent weeks with Young's confidence in mind. You can coach a player hard, said one staffer, without killing his spirit. But one player said it wasn't Reich's nature or coaching style to be overly critical of a player or position group. There also has been issues with scheme fits. I agree with all of that, but again, this falls. There's scheme issues because the scheme is supposed to be a certain way. You're bringing in a coach to install his offense and all that other stuff, to work with an offensive coordinator who's never called plays before, with a DC that basically got to keep all his boys there. The scheme is only a problem on the offensive side because he was not given the tools to succeed. And there was multiple levels of the owner meddling, picking the quarterback, making sure that he stays, all this stuff where you're like, he's not really the head coach anymore. He's just basically an OC for the worst roster in the NFL. So again, I think this article so far has been an indictment on the ownership and Carolina as a whole, and is continuing to justify that Frank was not the problem. He may have been a little bit of a problem, but he was not the problem, and firing him did not make the team better. It made the team worse and is now exposing more. So think about that next time, guys. Brown's background is with the Rams' mid-zone and wide zone runs, which weren't a great match for some of the Panthers' offensive linemen. Right guard Austin Corbett ran a scheme during his 3 seasons in LA, including the Rams' Super Bowl season of 2021. But Corbett missed the first 6 games of this year while recovering from an ACL injury, then injured his MCL in the same game against Dallas in Week 11 and was lost for the season. So we made an investment in a guy that played 1 game. Cool. Oh, killing me, dude. Center Bradley Bozeman conceded. What? his more bruising skill set wasn't ideal for the wide zone, best suited for quicker linemen who can occupy defensive linemen early in the play and then get to the second level. Running downhill is what I love to do. That's what I've made my money on. Unfortunately, we didn't have many opportunities to do that. Yeah, because the offensive line was god-awful and is god-awful. Reich experimented in training camp with putting Young under center, which Young did infrequently in college. Again, infrequently. Some concepts that might have helped negate an opponent's pass rush, including play-action passes, are more difficult when the quarterback is under center. But when the season started, Reich, Jim Kelly's backup in the Bills' K-gun offenses during the 1990s, had Young lined up in pistol and shotgun sets almost exclusively. With Brown back calling plays Sunday in the 21-18 loss at Tampa Bay, Young was under center for 7 of the Panthers' 13 first-quarter plays, but the familiar issues returned. Young was sacked 4 times and threw an interception in his final pass to end any comeback hopes. Reich's efforts to boost Young's confidence, some players viewed as overprotectiveness, continued through what turned out to be Reich's final offensive play with the Panthers at Tennessee, trailing by 7 and facing a 4th and 6 with 2-minute warning. Young saw the Titans lineup and believed it was cover 0, man coverage with no deep defender, and checked to a wide receiver screen to DJ Chark. Chark caught the ball 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage and was tackled for no gain by safety Amani Hooker, allowing the Titans to reclaim progression and run out the clock. Possession. Jeez. After that game, Reich said it was the right check by Young and that Chark might have gotten too far behind the line of scrimmage. A clearly agitated Chark insisted the Titans were not in cover 0 and the Panthers should have stuck with their original play call. But again, that is not Reich's fault. Reich is using his efforts to boost Young's confidence, and Young saw it, believed it was covered 0, and then Young checked it to a screen. And then afterwards, since he's trying to boost his confidence, Reich said it was the right check by Young. So you see, Reich was told the quarterback, he was told to support him, he was told to improve him, that you need to have fealty, basically, in this quarterback. This is your quarterback, so you need to basically move on from this. And that's what he did. He started protecting him. He started doing everything. Overprotectiveness of this is a joke. Overprotectiveness is what the owner is doing. A former NFL coach agreed, saying the Titans fooled Young into thinking they were in cover 0 before dropping their backside safety to the post area. That the post-game spotlight fell on one of the receivers was not a new development. The group's difficulties getting open has been a season-long narrative. I don't think we got the brunt of coaches' criticism, but I do feel like we do get a lot of the blame when it comes to the success of the offense, Chark said last week. Obviously, when you talk about the offense, the first thing we say is you've got to give Bryce weapons and things like that. The offensive problems have persisted all season. The Panthers are averaging 15.9 points per game and haven't topped the 20-point barrier since a 42-21 loss at Miami on October 15th. Bozeman isn't sure whether the problems stem from a scheme or personnel. The fact of it is we didn't really score many points this season, he said. We never could execute and get it to that point. The Panthers needed someone who can get Young untracked and playing closer to the level of Texans rookie C.J. Stroud, Young's friend and former AAU basketball rival in Southern California. Tepper, again, is expected to focus his search on coaches with offensive backgrounds with Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, who canceled his interview with the Panthers last year, viewed as a top target. Again, Deuce Staley and Ben Johnson were there in Detroit together, so Deuce Staley has told Ben Johnson about all this. That's a fact. Johnson is a native of Asheville, North Carolina, who played at North Carolina, but it might not be as easy to lure him to Charlotte as some of the in the Panthers organization, according to league sources, have been texting Johnson about how complicated it has been to work in Carolina this season. Again, the same thing I just said. While Tepper prepares to start another coaching search and Reich, Staley, and McCown contemplate their next moves, the Panthers and remaining coaches will try to avoid becoming the first 1-16 team since the NFL adopted the 17 game schedule. I can honestly say I don't think Reich was the sole problem and everything is fixed now. We've still got a lot of stuff we have to fix, says Chark. So, let's bring this back to me. This is a long one, real long one. Sorry, guys. Sorry, my stutters and everything this morning. It's been a weird one. But yeah, that article confirms everything I've said, confirms everything I felt. Frank was the scapegoat. There was more machinations in play. The GM needs to go. There's so much wrong with this team that Frank didn't deserve it because, again, scapegoated that man. He made mistakes and everything like that, but coaches make mistakes on a regular basis. He wasn't given the quarterback that he wanted. He wasn't given the pieces. He had the GM and a offensive coach, which again I believe is Chris Tabor, working against him. Come on, man. It's going to take years for this to all unfold. I think again it was 99.9 The Fan with Donnelly, where he's like, man, we're never going to know about this. And I think that's absolute malarkey. We will know about this at some point. Coaches will speak out about it. We will understand the situation. It might take damn near a decade, but this will all come to fruition, and I will be proven right again. So if you want to be proven right, just like me, come check us out. My name is Nick. This is Roll Coverage. You have a great rest of the day, and drop your thoughts on this whole article. I know it took us a while to get through it. It was a pretty decent sized article, and I kind of went on some tangents there, but I appreciate y'all being with me. I hope to see y'all soon.